Milo stared at the bakery door. The wood was thick, solid, and held the warmth of the ovens inside, but the night air was relentless. It seeped through the cracks in thin, icy needles that prickled his skin. Beyond the frame lay the town square, a place of rustling leaves and clicking street lamps that turned every shadow into a potential trap. Milo stood up, his fur bristling along his spine. He took one step toward the threshold, then another, his paws making no sound on the worn floorboards. He stopped. The wind outside howled, a long, low whistle that vibrated against the door panels. He leaned in, pressing his nose against the gap, and the scent of damp earth and cold metal rushed in to meet him. He pulled back, his muscles coiled tight, his eyes wide and unblinking. He remembered the way Lena had trembled earlier that evening, her hands shaking as she searched for a trace of the missing cat. That memory pushed him forward. He reached the door and nudged it with his shoulder. It groaned, swinging open just enough for him to squeeze through into the dark. Milo squeezed his body through the narrow gap, the rough wood scraping against his sides. He landed on the cold stone of the sidewalk, the transition from the bakery warmth to the biting night air immediate. He did not move at first. He kept his belly low, his claws digging into the grit of the pavement. The town square stretched out before him, a vast expanse of shifting grey and black. To his left, a street lamp flickered. He flinched, his ears swiveling toward the sound. Every rustle of a dry leaf felt like a predator shifting in the dark. He took a hesitant step, then froze as a sudden gust of wind sent a pile of debris dancing toward him. The trees at the edge of the square loomed overhead, their branches clawing at the moonlight. He was alone in the center of the square, exposed and shivering, with the path ahead disappearing into the deep black of the park. A metallic crash shattered the silence. A trash can lid had tipped over, clattering against the stone with a sound like a gunshot. Milo bolted, his paws scrabbling for purchase on the slick pavement. He slammed into the brick wall of a nearby building, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He pressed himself flat against the cold, rough surface, his breath coming in short, jagged gasps. He squeezed his eyes shut, but the image of Lena remained. He saw her hands, white-knuckled and shaking as she had searched the empty rooms earlier that night. That memory cut through the paralysis. He could not stay here, pressed against the brick, waiting for the next sound to break him. He pushed off the wall, his muscles burning as he surged forward. He darted between the deep shadows of the alleyways, keeping his body low, a blurred streak of movement against the dark. He navigated by the rhythm of his own pulse, ignoring the way the wind whipped at his fur. He focused only on the distance he had to cover. Every shadow was a hurdle, his claws clicking rhythmically on the ground as he pushed toward the looming edge of the park. Milo crossed the threshold into the park, the pavement giving way to damp, uneven earth. The transition was immediate. The streetlights of the square were gone, replaced by a thick, suffocating canopy that blocked the moon. Above him, the trees stood like ancient, hulking giants, their branches twisted into jagged claws that seemed to reach down toward his head. He slowed his pace, his belly fur brushing against the tall, wet grass. Every step was a calculation. He tested the ground, feeling for roots or hidden depressions that might trip him. The wind whistled through the high leaves, a low, mournful sound that masked the movement of anything else in the dark. He crouched, his ears rotating independently, tracking the shifting patterns of the shadows. Then the wind died. The sudden stillness was absolute. He held his breath. From the deep, tangled brush near a row of rusted benches, a sound pierced the silence. It was a high-pitched, thin mewl, sharp enough to cut through the heavy air. Milo crept forward, his paws barely disturbing the dead leaves. The scent of damp earth and something else, a faint, musk-like smell of distress, grew stronger with every inch. He navigated around a cluster of exposed roots, his eyes locked on the silhouette of a rusted park bench ahead. It sat crookedly in the grass, its iron legs sinking into the mud. He stopped 10 feet away, his body pressed low against the dirt. A small white ball of fur was wedged deep into the corner where the seat met the backrest. It was Luna. She was shivering so violently that her fur seemed to ripple in the moonlight. Milo took a slow, deliberate step, his tail twitching once. The movement was enough. Luna spun around, her body arching into a sharp, jagged line. Her eyes were wide, black voids reflecting the pale light. She opened her mouth, and a sharp, guttural hiss erupted, vibrating through the cold air. She swiped a paw at the empty space between them. Milo halted instantly, his own muscles locking in place. He was inches away from her, yet the distance felt like a chasm. Milo held his ground, refusing to retreat despite the sharp hiss. He lowered his head, tucking his chin toward his chest to expose his neck, a deliberate gesture of surrender. He shifted his weight, sinking his belly until it brushed the cold, damp soil, making his frame appear smaller, less threatening. The air remained thick with tension, but it began a low, rhythmic vibration in his throat. The purr was faint, a steady thrumming that cut through the silence of the park. He reached out with one paw, careful to keep his claws retracted, and nudged a dry, curled leaf across the dirt. It slid over the grass, coming to rest just inches from Luna's front paws. He watched her eyes. The wide black pupils flickered, tracking the movement of the leaf. Her ears, previously pinned flat against her skull, began to swivel forward. The violent shivering in her shoulders slowed, replaced by a cautious, rigid stillness. Milo blinked slowly, turning his gaze away to look at the dark trees, offering her a clear path. He nudged the leaf again, closer this time. Luna's nose twitched. She sniffed the air, her whiskers brushing the edge of the leaf. With a sudden jerky movement, she relaxed her arched back. Her claws retracted. She took one tentative step forward, her paws silent on the grass, closing the gap between them. Milo turned away from the bench, his tail held low as he began the trek toward the bakery. He moved with deliberate slowness, stopping every few feet to glance back. Luna followed, keeping her body pressed tight against the dark edges of the park walls, her movements mirroring his own. They navigated the alleyways, weaving between discarded crates and damp brick corners that still held the night's chill. As they emerged onto the main street, the sky above began to shift from deep indigo to a bruised, pale grey. The first light of dawn touched the horizon, casting long, thin shadows across the cobblestones. They reached the bakery door just as the sun broke the skyline. Milo nudged the wood with his nose, his paws trembling slightly from the exertion of the night. Inside, The sound of a heavy metal bowl hitting a counter echoed. The door swung inward. Arthur stood in the frame, his hands covered in white dust. He froze, his eyes widening as he looked down at the welcome mat. Milo stepped across the threshold, his tail finally rising high, followed by Luna, who moved with a cautious, lingering hesitation. An hour passed in the quiet hum of the bakery. The ovens ticked as they cooled, and the air grew heavy with the scent of yeast and flour. The bell above the door chimed, a sharp, metallic sound that cut through the silence. Lena stepped inside, her boots clicking against the floorboards. She stopped abruptly near the counter. Her gaze swept the room, landing on the corner where the two cats rested. She saw the small white shape of Luna. Lena did not make a sound. She did not call out or rush forward. She simply dropped her bag to the floor and knelt on the hard wood. She reached out, her fingers hovering for a heartbeat before she pulled the cat into her arms. Luna pressed her face against Lena's chest, her body relaxing into the embrace. Lena's hands moved over the cat's fur, checking for injuries, her movements steady and thorough. She pulled Luna closer, burying her face against the soft white fur. There was no speech, only the sound of rhythmic breathing and the soft rustle of movement. The tension that had defined the night evaporated. Milo retreated to the windowsill, the highest vantage point in the room. He sat with his paws tucked neatly beneath him, but his body remained coiled. Every time a car rumbled past the bakery or the wind rattled the glass, his ears swiveled toward the sound. His pupils dilated, scanning the street for threats that were no longer there. He watched Lena and Luna on the floor, the rhythmic rise and fall of their breathing anchoring the room. Slowly, the frantic thumping in his chest began to level out. He shifted his weight, his claws kneading the wooden ledge. The sun climbed higher, casting a square of golden light across the floorboards. Milo felt the heat soak into his fur, a stark contrast to the damp, biting chill of the park. He let his eyelids droop. The sharp, jagged edges of his alertness started to blur. He tucked his nose into his tail, forming a tight, compact circle. The bakery was quiet, save for the low hum of the cooling ovens. He had navigated the giants in the park, crossed the silent streets, and brought the light back into this space. The shadows outside no longer held power here. He exhaled a long, steady breath, his muscles finally unspooling. He closed his eyes, sinking into the stillness, the quiet warmth.